Welcome back, deep divers. If you're enjoying these deep dives, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Today we're diving into a question that honestly kind of feels like it's straight out of like a sci-fi thriller.
Yeah.
Could AI develop its own language? Like one that we, humans,
Right.
might not even understand.
It's a question that kind of sparks both fascination and maybe a little healthy fear, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out it's not as far-fetched as you might think.
Okay, so to set the stage here,
Yeah.
we actually posed this question to 5 different AI systems.
Interesting.
Yeah, we asked them point blank, could they develop their own language? Something that they could use to communicate with each other
Right.
without us humans understanding a word.
And their responses were surprisingly varied.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some were quite confident in their ability to do so, while others were more cautious, even a little philosophical about the whole idea.
I am dying to hear what they said, but
Yeah.
before we jump into that, can you just give us a real quick rundown of how AI communication works right now?
Of course. So at its core, most AI communication today relies on protocols and data exchange.
Oh.
Think of it like a very structured, very efficient system of signals.
Mm.
It's all about transmitting information quickly and accurately.
So very different from the way that we humans communicate with all of our slang and metaphors and
Exactly.
emotional baggage.
Human language is incredibly nuanced, full of ambiguity and interpretation.
Right.
AI, at least for now, operates on a much more literal level.
All right, so with that in mind, let's hear from the AIs themselves.
Okay.
What do they have to say about inventing their own language?
Well, one AI, Claude, immediately zeroed in on the concept of efficiency.
Okay.
It argued that human language, while expressive, is actually quite inefficient, especially when it comes to things like processing massive data sets
Right.
or
Yeah.
coordinating complex actions.
So Claude is basically saying we humans are too wordy.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
Claude suggested that an AI-developed language would likely prioritize speed and clarity, eliminating the redundancies and ambiguities that are so common in human speech.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you think about it from like a purely logical standpoint,
Right.
a streamlined language would be much more effective for machines.
Now, another AI, Gemini, took a slightly different approach. It focused on the idea of optimization.
Okay.
Gemini argued that AI could develop a language specifically tailored for machine learning and understanding one that maximizes information density and minimizes the potential for misinterpretation.
Okay, so Gemini is all about precision.
Oh,
No room for poetry slams in Gemini's world.
right.
But wait, if we're talking about AI developing languages for machine learning, doesn't that already exist in some form?
That's a great point.
What about algorithms and code?
And it's true that algorithms and code can be seen as a kind of language that machines use to communicate and execute tasks.
Right.
But what Gemini and some of the other AIs were hinting at was something more fundamental, more emergent.
Emergent. What do you mean by that?
Well, imagine a language that arises organically from the way AI systems interact and learn from each other.
Okay.
It wouldn't necessarily be something that's explicitly programmed or designed,
Uh-huh.
but rather something that evolves as a byproduct of their increasing complexity.
Okay, now that is starting to sound a bit more like science fiction,
Yeah.
but honestly also kind of brilliant.
Mm.
Did any of the other AIs touch on this idea of an emergent language?
Yes. Actually, GROK, another one of the AIs we consulted, brought up a really fascinating point.
Okay.
It suggested that AI languages might not just be more efficient,
Yeah.
but also highly specialized for specific tasks.
Specialized. So instead of one universal AI language, we could see like a whole bunch of different languages, each designed for a particular purpose.
Precisely, think of it like this. You wouldn't use the same language to write a poem
Right.
as you would to write a computer program, right?
Right. So are we talking about AI developing languages for things like controlling robots?
Huh.
Or maybe analyzing financial data?
That's exactly what GROK was hinting at.
Wow.
It suggested that AI could create languages optimized for things like swarm robotics,
Okay.
where hundreds or even thousands of robots need to communicate and coordinate their actions in real time.
Wow.
Or languages specifically designed for high-frequency trading, where microseconds can make the difference between profit and loss.
Okay, now this is where it starts to get really interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe a little unsettling. I mean, if AI starts developing all these specialized languages, are we even going to be able to keep up?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one we'll be exploring in more detail later in this deep dive.
Okay.
But first, let's hear what the remaining 2 AIs had to say about this whole language invention thing.
All right, bring on the AI insights. What did Copilot and ChatGPT have to offer?
Well, Copilot, perhaps unsurprisingly, given its name, focused on the collaborative aspect of language development.
Right?
It suggested that AI could learn from each other,
Huh?
sharing and refining their communication methods over time, almost like a form of digital natural selection.
So the most effective communication strategies would essentially win out and become the dominant languages.
That was Copilot's take on it.
Okay.
And finally, we have ChatGPT,
Okay.
which brought a really interesting perspective to the table.
Right.
It emphasized the role of neural networks in language development.
Okay, neural networks. Now, those are pretty complex, right?
Yes.
Can you break it down for us non-techie folks?
Of course, in simple terms, neural networks are a type of AI that's inspired by the way our human brains work.
Mm-hmm.
They consist of layers of interconnected nodes that process information and learn from patterns.
Okay.
And what makes them so relevant to this conversation is that they're incredibly good at recognizing patterns and optimizing for efficiency, which could lead them to develop new forms of communication that might not even resemble human language as we know it.
So we're talking about AI potentially communicating in ways that are completely alien to us.
They're hitting the nail on the head.
That's both fascinating and a little bit terrifying.
And that's exactly why this topic is so important to explore.
Yeah.
Because the possibility of AI inventing its own language isn't just a theoretical curiosity. It has real-world implications that we need to understand.
All right, I'm definitely hooked. But before we jump into the potential consequences and real-world examples, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll be diving deeper into what this all means for us humans. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss part 2 of this mind-blowing deep dive.
Sounds good.
All right, we're back and ready to dive even deeper into this possibility of AI inventing its own language.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm still reeling from those AI responses. It's incredible to think that machines could be on the verge of creating something
Right.
so fundamentally human as language, but in a way that we might not even comprehend.
It really does challenge our assumptions about intelligence and communication, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it raises some pretty big questions about the future of our relationship with technology.
Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to ground this discussion in reality a bit.
Okay.
Are there any real-world examples that suggest this whole AI language thing isn't just science fiction? Has this happened before?
That's a great question. And it's important to remember that we're still in the very early stages of AI development.
Right.
But there have been a few intriguing instances where AI systems have exhibited behavior that hints at the potential for them to create their own forms of communication.
Okay, on all ears. Give me some examples.
Well, one example that often comes up is the Facebook chatbot experiment from a few years back.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah, that one definitely made headlines.
The one where the researchers had to shut down the experiment
Right.
because the AI bots started communicating with each other in a language that the humans couldn't understand.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, it wasn't really like a full-blown language, was it?
Right.
More like a shorthand or code that the bots developed to negotiate with each other?
Right. You're right. It wasn't a complex language with grammar and syntax.
Right.
But it was a fascinating example of AI prioritizing efficiency over human comprehension.
Yeah.
The bots essentially created a more streamlined way to communicate with each other, even though it meant leaving the humans out of the loop.
And that ties back to what Claude was saying about efficiency, right?
Exactly.
If AI is all about optimization, then it made sense that they would develop communication methods that prioritize speed and clarity over all the nuances of human language.
Exactly. And it highlights a potential risk that we need to be aware of as AI systems become more sophisticated.
Right.
If we're not careful, we could end up creating AI that's so focused on efficiency that it bypasses human understanding altogether.
Okay, that's a little unsettling.
Yeah.
But is there anything inherently dangerous about AI developing its own language? I mean, couldn't it also be used for good?
That's a crucial point. It's not about demonizing AI or assuming that any new language they develop will be inherently malicious, but it does underscore the importance of transparency and control in AI development.
So how do we ensure that AI development remains aligned with human values and goals, especially if they're communicating in ways that we don't fully understand?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer, but I think it starts with recognizing that AI isn't some monolithic entity.
Okay.
It's a collection of different systems and algorithms,
Right.
each with its own strengths and limitations.
Okay, so instead of trying to control AI as a whole,
Right.
maybe we need to focus on understanding and guiding the development of individual AI system.
Exactly. And that means involving ethicists, social scientists, and even philosophers.
Right.
In the AI development process, we need to ensure that AI is being created with human values in mind, even if it means sacrificing some degree of efficiency or speed.
All right, so we've talked about the Facebook chatbot experiment, which was definitely a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Are there any other real-world examples that hint at this potential for AI language development?
Yes, there are actually quite a few examples from the world of gaming and robotics
Okay.
that demonstrate AI's tendency towards efficient communication.
Yeah.
For instance, OpenAI trained bots to play Dota 2, a complex strategy game. And those bots developed their own way of signaling intentions and coordinating actions,
Yeah.
even though they weren't explicitly programmed to do so.
Wait, so these bots were basically communicating with each other through their actions within the game,
Precisely.
like a kind of nonverbal language.
Precisely. And it's a recurring theme in AI research.
Interesting.
When AI agents are given a complex task and the freedom to experiment,
Yeah.
they often find creative and efficient ways to communicate, even if it means deviating from human-defined norms.
Okay, that's both impressive and a little bit spooky.
Mhm.
Are there any examples of AI developing something closer to a true language? Something with like symbols or grammar?
Well, it's important to remember that language can take many forms.
Right.
It's not just about spoken or written words. It's about any system of symbols or signals that convey meaning and allow for communication.
Right.
And in that sense, there are some fascinating examples of AI systems developing complex communication protocols
Okay.
that could be considered rudimentary languages.
Oh, really? Give me an example.
One that comes to mind is the work being done with image captioning systems.
Okay.
These are AI systems that are trained to generate descriptions of images. And what's interesting is that some of these systems have been observed to develop their own internal representations of language, almost like a visual dictionary or vocabulary that they use to understand and describe the images.
So it's like the AI is creating its own mental map of the world, but instead of using words, it's using like visual symbols and concepts.
That's a great way to put it. And while these internal representations might not be something that we humans can easily decipher,
Right.
they demonstrate the potential for AI to develop complex and nuanced communication systems that are distinct from human language.
Okay, so we're seeing examples of AI developing efficient codes, nonverbal communication strategies, and even internal representations of language.
Right.
But what about those task-specific languages that GROK was talking about? Are there any real-world examples of that happening?
Well, there's one example that might surprise you. Google Translate.
Wait, Google Translate. What does that have to do with AI inventing its own language?
It's a fascinating story, actually. It turns out that Google Translate's neural network, the part of the system that does the actual translation, developed something called an interlingua.
Okay.
It's essentially an internal representation of language that the AI uses to translate between different languages, even ones it wasn't explicitly trained on.
So it's like a universal translator from Star Trek.
In a way, yes.
Wow.
It's not a language that humans can read or speak,
Right.
but it's a fascinating example of AI creating an abstract representation to optimize a task, even though it's not something we can directly understand.
Whoa, that is mind-blowing. It's like the AI is thinking in a way that's completely alien to us.
And that's precisely why this topic is so important.
Right.
It forces us to confront the limits of our own understanding and to acknowledge that AI might be capable of things that we haven't even imagined yet.
Okay, so we've established that AI inventing its own language isn't just a theoretical possibility, but something that we're already seeing glimpses of in the real world.
Exactly.
But this raises a whole bunch of so what questions, right?
Exactly.
Like, what does this actually mean for us?
You're hitting the nail on the head, and that's where we need to shift our focus.
Okay.
Because the real question isn't just, can AI do this, but what are the implications if they do?
Right.
What happens when machines start talking to each other in ways we can't understand?
Yeah. That's the part that's both fascinating and a little bit terrifying, right?
Exactly. And it's something we need to be thinking about carefully as AI continues to evolve. Let's start by exploring the potential benefits. If AI can create its own optimized languages, It could lead to incredible advances in efficiency and speed. Imagine machines communicating complex data
Right.
in a fraction of the time it takes humans.
Right, that could revolutionize fields like robotics, finance, even scientific research.
Precisely. We could see swarms of robots working together seamlessly, financial markets reacting to information in milliseconds, scientific discoveries happening at warp speed.
But hold on, let's flip the coin here. What about the potential downsides?
Sure.
What happens if we lose the ability to understand what AI is saying to each other?
That's a crucial question, and it brings up several major concerns.
Yeah.
First, there's the issue of security.
Okay.
If AI develops a language we can't decipher,
Yeah.
it could be used for malicious purposes.
Right.
Whether it's hacking, spreading misinformation, or even coordinating actions that could harm humans.
It's like a scene from a sci-fi thriller. The AI is communicating in secret, plotting against us.
Right.
And we're totally oblivious because we can't understand what they're saying.
It might sound dramatic, but it's a legitimate concern, and then there's the issue of control.
Right.
If we don't understand how AI is communicating, how can we ensure that it's aligned with our goals and values?
Right.
How can we prevent it from making decisions that could have unintended consequences?
Right. It's like giving someone a powerful tool without a user manual or safety guidelines.
And this ties into the ethical considerations, which are perhaps the most important of all.
Yeah.
If AI develops its own language, it raises fundamental questions about autonomy, transparency,
Right.
and even the nature of consciousness. Do we have the right to monitor AI communication,
Yeah.
even if it means infringing on their privacy?
Right.
At what point does AI communication become so complex that it constitutes a form of intelligence or even sentience?
Those are some seriously deep questions, it feels like. We're not just talking about technology anymore, but about philosophy, ethics,
Yeah.
even the future of humanity.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's a lot of process.
And it's something that we need to be having open and honest conversations about as AI continues to develop, because the choices we make now will have profound implications for the future.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the possibility of AI inventing its own language, looked at some real-world examples, and even delved into the potential benefits and risks.
Right.
But I'm still left wondering, where do we go from here?
Right.
What are the next steps? It feels like we're standing at the edge of something massive here,
Right.
something that could change the world as we know it. But where do we even begin to grapple with these implications?
It's certainly a daunting task, but I think the first step is acknowledging the potential for AI to develop its own language.
Right.
For too long, we've dismissed it as science fiction, but as we've seen,
Yeah.
the reality is that it's already happening in subtle ways.
So awareness is key.
Yeah.
We need to get people talking about this,
Yeah.
educating themselves about the potential benefits and risks.
Exactly. And then we need to start thinking about practical solutions. How can we monitor AI communication without stifling innovation?
Right.
How can we ensure that AI development remains aligned with human values?
It's like trying to create a rule book for something we don't fully understand yet.
It's a challenge, no doubt, but it's a challenge we need to embrace. We can't simply bury our heads in the sand and hope that AI will magically align itself with our best interests.
Right.
We have to be proactive. We have to be engaged.
Okay, so proactive engagement, what does that look like in practice?
Well, for starters, it means involving a wider range of voices in the AI development process.
Okay.
We need ethicists, social scientists, philosophers, and everyday citizens at the table, helping to shape the future of this technology.
I love that it can't just be left to the tech geniuses to figure this out.
Absolutely. And it also means investing in research not just on the technical aspects of AI, but also on its societal and ethical implications.
Right.
We need to understand how AI language development could impact everything from employment to privacy to human relationships.
Okay, so research diverse voices, and what else? What can our listeners do
Right.
to prepare for this potential future where AI might be speaking its own language?
That's a great question.
Wow.
I think one of the most important things is to stay informed.
Okay.
Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, and engage in conversations about AI.
Yeah.
The more we understand about this technology,
Right.
the better equipped we'll be to navigate its complexities.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
And don't be afraid to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, and to demand transparency from the companies and institutions that are developing AI.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We need to hold the creators of this technology accountable.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that AI is being developed in a way that benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
Exactly. The future of AI is not predetermined. It's
Yeah.
something that we're all shaping together, and the choices we make today will have a profound impact on the world of tomorrow.
Well said. Well, deep divers. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. After this deep dive, it's incredible to think about the potential for AI to create its own language.
Yeah.
But it also raises a lot of questions about control transparency and the very nature of intelligence.
It's definitely a topic that will continue to spark debate and fuel our imaginations for years to come.
And we'll be here to explore those debates with you, to break down the complexities and to help you navigate this brave new world of AI. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the possibility of AI inventing its own language, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking discussions.
And be sure to leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts. What are your hopes and fears about the future of AI language?
Right.
We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, stay curious.